I had always been the coding guy, the one who could turn ideas into digital reality. For 15 years, Jake had been by my side from college dorm rooms to late-night hackathons. We were the perfect team, my technical brilliance and his business savvy. 3 years of my life went into creating that health app, pouring my soul into every line of code. I never thought the person who knew me best would be the one to steal everything. The warning signs were there, but friendship blinded me to what was happening right before my eyes. Before I tell you how my best friend became my worst nightmare, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever trusted someone who did not deserve it. Growing up in Seattle was not always easy for me. My family struggled financially, but my parents worked hard to provide the essentials. What they could not afford was the latest technology, but I was determined to learn coding anyway. At 14, I spent hours at the public library teaching myself programming languages from borrowed books and free online resources. The librarians knew me by name, often letting me stay past closing time when they saw my dedication. I would dream about creating something meaningful, something that would change lives while allowing me to support my family. My high school did not have advanced computer classes, so I joined online forums and coding communities to continue learning. By senior year, I had built several simple applications and games, enough to earn a partial scholarship to a state university where I could study computer science properly. Those early years shaped my work ethic and instilled in me a deep appreciation for what could be accomplished through persistence and self-education. I carried those values with me to college, determined to make the most of the opportunity I had worked so hard to obtain. It was during my freshman computer science class that I met Jake Thompson. We were paired for a project, and our different approaches to problem-solving immediately complemented each other. While I was methodical, careful, and focused on writing clean, efficient code, Jake was all about the big picture. He could envision how our programs would scale and be used in real-world scenarios. His charismatic personality balanced my more introverted nature, and soon we were hanging out beyond class projects. Our friendship deepened during the endless coding competitions and hackathons we entered together. We would spend entire weekends fueled by energy drinks and pizza, pushing through the night to beat deadlines. Jake always took the lead in presenting our work, charming the judges while I made sure everything ran flawlessly behind the scenes. We made a formidable team, winning several competitions that helped fund our education and build our reputations in the department. Those late-night coding sessions were about more than just programming. During breaks, we would talk about our dreams, families, and the impact we hoped to make someday. Jake came from a wealthy family in California, his path to college paved by connections and privilege. Despite our different backgrounds, we found common ground in our ambition and love for technology. He would often tell me, "Randy, your code and my business sense will make us millionaires someday." I believed him completely. After graduation, our career paths diverged naturally. I took a steady job at a mid-sized tech company called Unauthorized, focusing on developing their security infrastructure. The stable paycheck and benefits allowed me to help my parents financially while continuing to improve my skills. Jake, meanwhile, jumped from one flashy startup to another, always chasing the next big thing. He moved to San Francisco, immersing himself in the Silicon Valley culture of rapid growth and disruptive innovation. Despite the physical distance and different lifestyles, we maintained our friendship through regular video calls and annual meetups. Jake would fly to Seattle or I would visit San Francisco, and we would spend days catching up, brainstorming ideas and reminiscing about college. He always had exciting stories about celebrity investors and lavish industry parties, while I shared the satisfaction of building reliable systems that millions of people used daily, even if they never knew my name. "You have the talent to do so much more than work for someone else," Jake would tell me during these visits. "You should be building your own company." I would smile and say, "Someday," not realizing that someday was approaching faster than I expected. The inspiration for my app came from a personal health crisis. At 32, I was diagnosed with a chronic condition that required constant monitoring and medication adjustments. The existing health apps were frustrating to use, fragmented, confusing, and lacking the intelligent features that could make management easier. during a particularly difficult week of tracking symptoms and medication effects, I realized I could create something better. My concept was revolutionary, an AI-driven health monitoring platform that would not just track data but predict potential issues before they became serious. It would learn from user patterns, integrate with wearable devices, and provide actionable insights that could be shared with healthcare providers. The market potential was enormous. Millions of people living with chronic conditions could benefit, and the data collected with proper consent could advance medical research significantly. I became obsessed with the idea, spending every free moment researching, planning, and developing the first components. My apartment transformed into a development studio with whiteboards covering the walls and sticky notes marking milestones. I took a leave of absence from my job to focus entirely on the project, living off my savings and the belief that this could change healthcare as we knew it. The initial development phase was both exhilarating and exhausting. I worked 16-hour days tackling complex algorithms and privacy challenges that few developers had addressed successfully before. When I hit technical roadblocks, I would solve them through persistence, sometimes spending entire weekends debugging a single feature until it worked perfectly. After 6 months of solitary development, I had created a working prototype that demonstrated the core functionality. The app could already track multiple health metrics, simultaneously identify patterns invisible to the human eye, and generate preliminary predictions based on user data. Even in its early stage, it performed better than anything else on the market. As I watched the first end-to-end test complete successfully, a wave of pride washed over me. This was not just another app. It was something that could genuinely improve lives. My excitement grew as I refined the interface and expanded the predictive capabilities. Beta testers, friends with various health conditions, reported significant improvements in managing their health after just a few weeks. One friend with diabetes called it life-changing when the app accurately predicted a blood sugar crash 30 minutes before it happened, giving him time to prevent it entirely. These early successes convinced me that I was onto something truly special. As the complexity of launching a health tech product became clearer, I realized I needed business expertise to bring my vision to market. Jake, with his startup experience and industry connections, was the obvious person to call. When I shared the concept during our video call, his eyes lit up immediately. "Randy, this is it," he said, leaning toward the camera. "This is what we always talked about in college. You have created something that could disrupt the entire health tech industry." His enthusiasm was infectious. We discussed a partnership where I would maintain control of the technology and product development with a 70% stake, while Jake would handle business development, marketing, and investment with 30%. The arrangement seemed fair, given our respective contributions. We sealed the deal with a digital handshake based on 15 years of friendship and trust. Neither of us suggested formalizing the agreement with contracts, a decision I would come to regret deeply. Jake relocated to Seattle the following month, and our collaboration entered a productive phase. He created impressive pitch decks and marketing materials that captured the essence of my vision while making it accessible to investors. His business plan was comprehensive, outlining a clear path to market with realistic revenue projections. Having him handle these aspects freed me to focus on perfecting the technology, and development accelerated significantly. Within 2 months of our partnership, Jake secured a meeting with Walter Green, an angel investor known for supporting health technology. The meeting exceeded our expectations. Walter was impressed by the demo and the market analysis Jake presented. He offered $100,000 for 5% of the company, providing the runway we needed to complete development and prepare for a proper launch. That night, we celebrated at an upscale restaurant, toasting to what seemed like the beginning of our success story. "To the next health tech unicorn," Jake said, raising his glass, "and to partnerships built on friendship." As development continued and launch preparations intensified, subtle warning signs began to emerge. Jake started missing our scheduled update meetings, claiming he was busy with investor discussions he could not tell me about yet. "Trust the process," he would say when I asked for details. "Some things are better kept confidential until they are finalized." More concerning were the changes appearing in the marketing materials without my consultation. The emphasis shifted from the innovative technology to vague promises of revolutionary healthcare disruption. When I questioned these changes, Jake dismissed my concerns, saying, "This is marketing language that investors respond to." The technical details just confused them. I also noticed Jake making modifications to the app itself, minor interface adjustments and feature tweaks that had not gone through proper testing. When I raised this issue, he became defensive, suggesting I was being too rigid and perfectionist. "We need to move fast in this market," he insisted. "Perfect is the enemy of good enough." Our previously smooth communication developed an uncomfortable tension. Jake would be mysteriously unavailable for days, then reappear with demands for technical changes to support partnerships he refused to discuss in detail. The collaborative atmosphere we had enjoyed was gradually replaced by an environment of secrecy and unilateral decisions. After several weeks of mounting frustration, I decided to address these issues directly. I invited Jake to my apartment for dinner, creating a relaxed setting for what I knew would be a difficult conversation. Over homemade pasta, I carefully expressed my concerns about the lack of transparency and the unilateral decisions. "I feel like we are no longer operating as equal partners," I explained. "I need to be involved in all aspects of this company. After all, this is my creation, my vision." Jake leaned back in his chair, swirling his wineglass thoughtfully. "Randy, you are a brilliant developer, but you do not understand how the business world works. Some negotiations are delicate. If I told you everything, your straightforward nature might jeopardize deals before they happen." He assured me that everything he was doing served our shared goal of success. With practiced sincerity, he promised greater transparency moving forward. "I have always looked out for you," he said, placing his hand on my shoulder. "Trust has brought us this far. Do not let paranoia ruin what we are building." His words were reassuring, but the knot of doubt in my stomach remained. Still, 15 years of friendship weighed heavily against my suspicions. I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt, hoping our partnership would return to its earlier collaborative spirit. My tentative peace was shattered 2 weeks later. While picking up lunch at a cafe near our co-working space, I spotted Jake through the window of an upscale restaurant across the street. He was engaged in what appeared to be an intense discussion with Elaine Mercer, the CEO of HealthSync, one of our main potential competitors. They were reviewing documents and nodding in agreement. That night I could not sleep. The next day I began discreetly investigating. Over the next week I discovered evidence of multiple meetings Jake had attended without my knowledge, not just with HealthSync but with several other health tech companies and investors who had never been mentioned to me. The final confirmation came when Jake left his laptop open during a coffee break. Against my better judgment, I looked at his screen and saw modified copies of my code with sections highlighted and annotated. The file names included HS, Review, presumably standing for HealthSync Review. When confronted with this evidence, Jake had a ready explanation. He claimed these were exploratory partnership discussions to position our product more effectively in the market. "We need to understand the competitive landscape," he said smoothly. "Sometimes that means discussing potential collaborations or acquisitions." He portrayed his actions as strategic brilliance rather than betrayal, making me feel naive for questioning his methods. "This is how business is done at this level," he explained his tone, suggesting I should be grateful for his expertise rather than suspicious. "I should have kept you in the loop," he conceded, "but I did not want to distract you from development with preliminary talks that might go nowhere." He promised complete transparency moving forward and suggested we focus on preparing for our upcoming meeting with major investors. I wanted to believe him. The alternative, that my oldest friend was actively betraying me, was too painful to accept. Against my better judgment, I agreed to proceed with the investor meeting, making a mental note to be more vigilant about protecting my intellectual property. The investor meeting was scheduled at the prestigious Rainier Club in downtown Seattle. We had been preparing for weeks, refining our presentation to showcase both the technological innovation and market potential. As the creator and technical genius behind the product, I expected to lead the technical portions of the presentation while Jake handled the business aspects. On the morning of the meeting, Jake texted that he needed to arrive separately to set up some surprises. When I arrived, I found him already deep in conversation with the investors. 3 partners from Cascade Venture Partners, a firm known for launching health tech companies to billion-dollar valuations. "Ah, here he is," Jake said as I entered. "This is Randy, our lead developer, who has been instrumental in building out my vision." My vision. The phrase hit me like a physical blow. Throughout the presentation, Jake subtly but consistently positioned himself as the founder and visionary while framing my role as the talented executor of his concept. He referred to my initial sketches, and when I first conceived this approach, statements that blatantly reversed our actual roles. More disturbing were the slides I had never seen before outlining corporate structures and equity distributions that differed significantly from our agreed arrangement. My 70% stake had somehow transformed into 40%, with references to founder shares being allocated primarily to Jake. I sat through the presentation with mounting horror, trying to maintain a professional demeanor while my stomach twisted into knots. The investors seemed impressed, particularly by the working prototype I had demonstrated. They asked technical questions that Jake deflected to me, then reclaimed control for all business discussions. By the end of the meeting, the investors had expressed serious interest, suggesting they would be ready to discuss term sheets within a week. As we left the meeting, Jake was jubilant. "They are practically throwing money at us." "This is happening, Randy." His excitement contrasted sharply with my growing sense of dread. That evening I began investigating more thoroughly. What I discovered devastated me completely. Jake had applied for a trademark for our app name, in his name only. The LLC he had formed to house our company listed him as the sole managing member with 90% ownership. Most damning of all, I found evidence that portions of our codebase had been copied to external servers not under my control. The final piece came when I accessed Jake's cloud storage using a password he had once shared for collaborative documents. There I found email correspondence with HealthSync discussing acquisition possibilities, not of our company but of Jake's proprietary health prediction technology. The emails made clear that Jake was positioning himself to sell my technology without me. With hands shaking, I compiled all the evidence and confronted Jake the next morning at our co-working space. I placed printouts of the documents before him one by one: the trademark application, the LLC, filing the server logs showing code transfers, and finally the emails with HealthSync. "How could you do this?" My voice was barely a whisper. 15 years of friendship and you steal my life's work. Jake's transformation was immediate and chilling. The warm, friendly demeanor vanished, replaced by cold calculation. There was no denial, no attempt to explain away the evidence. Instead, he leaned back in his chair with an air of annoyed impatience. "You are the genius, Randy, but I am the businessman. This is how the world works," he said matter-of-factly. "Your problem is you think friendship means something in business. It does not. Did you really think your little health app would go anywhere without someone like me? Ideas are worthless. Without execution, and execution includes knowing how to position yourself." His casual betrayal left me speechless. Jake continued, his tone almost condescending. "Look, you will still be compensated fairly as a key developer, better than you would have done at Innosoft. But the reality is I have the connections, I know how to talk to investors, and I made this happen. Your contribution is technical, replaceable. Mine is not." I left that meeting in a state of shock, my mind unable to fully process the magnitude of the betrayal. The next day, I consulted with Patricia Liang, an attorney, specializing in intellectual property and startup law. Her assessment was blunt and painful. "Without a written agreement documenting your original ownership and the terms of your partnership, this will be an uphill battle," she explained. "You do have some claims based on being the original creator, and the evidence of code transfers could support claims of trade secret misappropriation. But litigation would be expensive, likely taking years with uncertain outcomes. She estimated legal fees could exceed $200,000 with no guarantee of success. Jake had expertly exploited our friendship and my trust, leaving minimal paper trails that would definitively prove my version of events. The code itself was my strongest evidence, but even that could be clouded by Jake's contributions over our months of partnership. "I wish I had better news," Patricia said sympathetically. but this is why we always insist on proper documentation before beginning any business relationship, even with friends. Especially with friends. I left her office feeling completely defeated. The app that had consumed 3 years of my life, born from my personal health struggles and technical expertise, was being stolen before my eyes. Worse, it was being taken by the person I had trusted most in the world. The sense of betrayal went beyond the business loss. It shattered my fundamental belief in human decency and friendship. The weeks following the devastating discovery were the darkest of my life. I fell into a deep depression, unable to write code or even look at a computer without feeling physically ill. I withdrew from friends and family, ignoring calls and messages as I tried to process what had happened. My apartment, once a hub of creative energy, became a prison of rumination and regret. Sleep eluded me as I replayed every conversation with Jake over the past year, seeing the warning signs I had missed and the manipulation I had accepted. During the day, I would stare at walls, paralyzed by self-blame and questions that had no answers. How could I have been so naive? How could I have trusted so completely without protecting myself? My parents, worried by my sudden silence, drove from their retirement home in Portland to check on me. They found me unshaven, surrounded by takeout containers and barely functional. My father, a retired construction foreman, sat with me at my kitchen table. "Son, I have seen men lose jobs, homes, and fortunes," he said gently. "But the only ones who stayed down were those who decided their story was over. Yours is not." Their visit forced me to at least maintain the appearance of functioning. I showered, ate proper meals, and pretended things were improving. After they left, I made token efforts to apply for jobs, knowing I needed income soon. But my heart was not in it. The thought of working on someone else's vision after having my own stolen felt like another layer of defeat. 2 more weeks passed in this half-alive state until a former colleague, Sophia Jung, reached out. We had worked together at Unauthorized, and she had since founded her own data analysis startup. Her message was simple. "Heard you are going through something. No need to talk about it, but I could use your expertise on a project. Paid consultation, your rates. Tomorrow noon, Westlake Coffee." The meeting with Sophia was supposed to be about her project, but her perceptiveness quickly turned the conversation to my situation. Without naming Jake, I explained what had happened. Instead of the sympathy I expected, Sophia offered a perspective that cut through my fog of despair. "The thing about intellectual property," she said, setting down her coffee cup precisely, "is that the most valuable parts exist in the creator's mind. The documentation, the code, those are just artifacts. The true innovation is the thinking behind it." She pointed out that Jake, while business savvy, likely did not understand the deepest architectural aspects of the system I had built. The prototype he had was functional, but did not include my latest algorithms or the advanced features still in development on my private server. What if, she suggested, instead of fighting to reclaim what he took, you built something even better, something he could not possibly replicate, because he lacks your understanding? Her words struck a chord. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt a flicker of possibility. That evening I opened my computer and reviewed the code Jake had not seen, experimental features and architectural improvements I had been working on privately. I realized Sophia was right. The most innovative aspects of my system remained solely in my possession, both in code and in my understanding of the problem domain. Over the next few days, an idea formed into a plan. I would not just rebuild what was lost. I would create a superior version that addressed limitations in the original design. The health monitoring would be more accurate, the predictive algorithms more sophisticated, and the user experience more intuitive. I would focus on aspects Jake had never fully grasped during our partnership. With renewed purpose, I began systematically documenting everything related to the original project. I gathered emails, text messages, and development logs that established my role as the creator. I recovered earlier prototypes from backed-up repositories that predated Jake's involvement. I compiled a detailed timeline showing my 3 years of work before Jake entered the picture. This evidence portfolio became my first concrete step toward reclaiming my work. My next step was reaching out to Walter Green, the angel investor who had provided our initial funding. I requested a private meeting, explaining that there were governance issues he should be aware of before further investment. Walter, a veteran of startup drama, agreed to meet me at his office. I presented my evidence, methodically focusing on facts rather than emotions. I showed him prototypes dating back 18 months before Jake's involvement, email threads where Jake acknowledged me as the creator and documentation of the code transfers that had occurred without my knowledge. I invested because of the technology and the apparent strength of your team, Walter said after reviewing the materials. This changes the equation significantly. He agreed to withhold further investment, pending resolution of the ownership dispute, and crucially offered to make introductions to ethical investors who might support my continued development efforts if I could show tangible progress on the next iteration. With Walter's conditional support, I focused completely on development. I rented a small studio apartment where I could work without reminders of Jake's betrayal. For 12 to 16 hours daily, I coded the enhanced version of my health platform, incorporating insights gained from the first iteration and adding features Jake had never even imagined. The core innovation of my new approach was a more sophisticated neural network that could identify health patterns across seemingly unrelated metrics. This advancement made the predictive capabilities significantly more accurate and opened possibilities for applications beyond the original concept. I also redesigned the security architecture from the ground up, creating a system Jake would be unable to access or copy. 4 months of intensive work resulted in a functioning prototype that significantly outperformed the version Jake had taken. Beta tests with a small group of users with chronic conditions showed improvements in prediction accuracy from 76% to 92%, a game-changing advancement for health monitoring technology. Throughout this period, I worked with Patricia Liang on a creative legal approach. Rather than pursuing an expensive lawsuit with uncertain outcomes, we prepared for a strategic confrontation backed by overwhelming evidence and a superior product. Patricia helped me document everything meticulously and developed a settlement framework that would protect my interests without necessarily requiring litigation. By the time Jake scheduled his first major investor pitch with Cascade Venture Partners, I was ready. Through Walter's connections, I arranged to meet with the same investors the day before Jake's presentation. Walter himself attended to lend credibility to my claims. In the Cascade Venture Partners conference room, I calmly presented 3 things: the evidence of my original creation, the documentation of Jake's systematic theft, and, most importantly, a demonstration of my new superior health platform. The investors were initially skeptical, then increasingly engaged as they recognized the technological advancement my new system represented. We have a presentation tomorrow with Jake Thompson about what appears to be an earlier version of this technology, one partner noted. Would you object to both of you being present to address these discrepancies directly? It was exactly what I had hoped for. I agreed immediately. The next day, Jake walked into the conference room with his usual confident smile, which froze when he saw me sitting with the investors. What followed was the most difficult but empowering confrontation of my life. The lead investor, Diane Merriweather, opened bluntly. "Jake, we have some concerns about the provenance of the technology you are presenting today. Randy has provided compelling evidence that he is the original creator." Jake attempted his usual charm and deflection, but this time it fell flat. When pressed, his explanations became contradictory. The decisive moment came when Diane asked specific technical questions about the system architecture, questions I had anticipated, and Jake could not possibly answer correctly. His facade cracked completely when I demonstrated my enhanced platform with features and capabilities he had never seen. The stark technological gap between what he was offering and what I had created was undeniable. "It seems we have been misled about the ownership and development of this technology," Diane concluded. "Our firm cannot proceed with investment under these circumstances." Jake left the meeting ashen-faced. The following week, through our respective attorneys, we negotiated a settlement. Jake would relinquish all claims to my intellectual property, dissolve the LLC he had formed, and transfer the trademark back to me. In exchange, I would not pursue legal action for his earlier misappropriation. Walter Green would receive his original investment back from the funds Jake had not yet spent. Within industry circles, word spread quickly about what had happened. Jake's reputation suffered significantly, not just for the theft itself, but for his technical misrepresentations that had been exposed in front of major investors. Several startup founders who had been considering hiring him as a business development executive quietly withdrew their offers. My victory felt bittersweet. The friendship I had valued for 15 years was gone forever, replaced by painful lessons about trust and business. But I had reclaimed my work and proven my resilience in the face of betrayal. With a clean slate and full control of my intellectual property, I began rebuilding properly. I assembled a small team of developers I knew personally from previous jobs, each signing clear contracts with defined roles and equity stakes. I brought on a business development executive with impeccable ethics references and documented everything meticulously. 8 months after the confrontation with Jake, we launched the health monitoring platform under a new name. The market response exceeded even my optimistic projections. Within 6 months, we had 100,000 users and secured a proper Series A investment of $3 million from a consortium led by Cascade Venture Partners, the same firm that had rejected Jake. The app began making a real difference in users' lives. We regularly received messages from people whose health had improved significantly through the early interventions our system recommended. A medical journal published a preliminary study showing our predictive algorithms could identify potential cardiac events days before conventional monitoring, potentially saving lives. These successes helped in my personal healing process. But recovering from Jake's betrayal took longer than reclaiming my business. Trust did not come easily anymore. I approached new relationships, both personal and professional, with careful boundaries and clear expectations. Legal documentation became my standard practice, even with people I liked and respected. In time, I learned to distinguish between healthy caution and paralyzing suspicion. The experience had made me wiser, not just about business protection, but about human nature itself. I recognized that people are complex mixtures of good intentions, self-interest, and moral flexibility. This understanding did not make me cynical, but gave me a more nuanced approach to relationships and partnerships. The most valuable lesson came not from the betrayal itself, but from what followed. I discovered my own strength and resourcefulness in the darkest moment of my professional life. When everything was taken, I found I still possessed the most valuable asset, the creative mind that had conceived the original innovation. True innovation cannot be stolen, because it is not a static thing. It is a continuing process of creation and improvement. Jake could take a snapshot of my work, but he could not take my ability to evolve and advance that work beyond what he had captured. 2 years after that devastating discovery in the co-working space, my company was valued at $27 million, with a team of 32 dedicated employees working to expand our health technology to new applications. Jake had moved to another state and another industry, his brief moment of theft, ultimately gaining him nothing of lasting value. The betrayal taught me more about strength than success ever could. It showed me that losing everything external can reveal what cannot be taken: resilience, creativity, and the capacity to begin again. And perhaps that is the most important understanding of all. Has someone ever betrayed your trust in a significant way? How did you recover, and what did you learn from the experience? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life lessons that might help you navigate your own challenges. Remember that sometimes our greatest setbacks lead to our most meaningful growth. Thank you for listening, and I hope my journey brings some perspective to whatever struggles you might be facing right now.